Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Open the door.
Officer, it's midnight. Can I see your warrant, please?
I don't answer to you. You answer to me. Open the door now.
I'm an American citizen. What's your probable cause?
You must provide documents upon request by a federal agent.
That's not accurate. Under the Fourth Amendment...
Shut up! I can arrest you right now.
Agent Raymond Corbin had been with ICE for 6 years when he made a midnight decision that would cost him everything. His career, his reputation, and his freedom were all on the line after a series of events that eventually triggered a $6.7 million federal lawsuit. It all started when he began pounding on the door of a registered nurse who had just finished a grueling 12-hour trauma shift, demanding citizenship papers without a warrant or a shred of probable cause. What Corbin didn't realize as he stood under that porch light making threats was that he wasn't intimidating a helpless victim. He was recording his own professional execution. The doorbell camera captured every single word in perfect clarity. While Tina Sanders' hand rested calmly on the security chain inside, Corbin's hand moved toward his gun. Tina Sanders' scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic as she pulled into her driveway, just past midnight. 14 years as a critical care nurse at Atlanta Memorial Hospital had taught her how to function on almost no sleep, but tonight's shift had been particularly brutal. She had handled 3 car accident victims, 2 cardiac arrests, and a gunshot wound that required her to hold manual compressions for 20 minutes straight while the surgical team prepped the OR. Her home in Cascade Heights represented everything she had worked for. This modest 2-bedroom house sat on land her grandmother's family had purchased back in 1962, a tangible piece of history passed down through 3 generations. The doorbell camera she'd installed after a few package thefts seemed like a minor security upgrade at the time, but it would prove to be the most important purchase of her life. She barely had time to set her keys down when the pounding started. Through the door, a sharp, commanding voice shouted, "Open the door! Immigration and Customs Enforcement!" Tina's exhaustion evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. For the last 2 years, she had volunteered with the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. She had studied immigration law, constitutional rights, and the precise legal boundaries of federal authority. She knew right away that this didn't feel right. "Can I see your warrant, please?" she called through the closed door, her voice steady. "I don't need to show you anything. Open this door right now," Corbin barked back. The doorbell camera captured the scene in crystalline clarity. Agent Raymond Corbin's tactical vest with ICE in bold letters, his aggressive stance, and the way his hand hovered near his sidearm. It also captured his face the moment Tina opened the door with the security chain still latched. The immediate frustration of a man accustomed to inspiring fear, suddenly confronted with calm, informed resistance. Corbin had spent 6 years with ICE, the last 3 in Atlanta. His personnel file was a red flag parade containing 17 complaints, all of which had been dismissed. He'd built a career on assumptions and intimidation, often conducting unauthorized community sweeps in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods, operating under the belief that his badge was all the justification he needed. He had never encountered anyone quite like Tina Sanders. Tina studied the man through the narrow opening. His face was flushed. Whether from the cold or pure anger, she couldn't tell. Behind him, the quiet suburban street was empty, with streetlights casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. "I'm an American citizen," she said, her voice carrying the same measured tone she used when explaining life-saving procedures to panicked families in the ICU. "I was born in Decatur. What is this about?" Corbin stepped closer, filling the camera frame. "I'm conducting an investigation. I need to see your identification and proof of citizenship right now." Every instinct told Tina this was a violation. Federal agents don't conduct investigations at midnight without warrants, and they certainly don't show up at random homes demanding papers. What investigation? Do you have a warrant? What is your probable cause for being at my home? The questions landed like accusations. Corbin's jaw tightened. In his niche of law enforcement, he had grown used to a specific dynamic. He demanded, and people complied. Fear was efficient, but Tina wasn't afraid. She was exhausted, annoyed, and acutely aware that a crime was being committed on her doorstep by the person sworn to uphold the law. I don't need to explain myself to you, Corbin snapped. You're required to provide documentation when a federal agent requests it. That's not accurate, Tina shot back immediately. Under the Fourth Amendment, you need probable cause or a warrant to enter my home or demand documentation. Do you have either? The question hung in the night air. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and fell silent. Corbin's expression shifted from frustration to something much darker. He'd been challenged before, but usually by people who didn't know the law or couldn't articulate their rights. This woman knew exactly what she was talking about, and that made her a threat to his authority. You people, he began, his voice dropping to a menacing growl, always think you know the law. Those two words, you people, stripped away any pretense of legitimate law enforcement. Tina didn't flinch. She felt a surge of recognition. She knew exactly what kind of man she was dealing with now. I was born in this country, Agent, she said, waiting for him to identify himself. He stayed silent. I'm a registered nurse. I've been at work for 12 hours saving lives. I'm going to close this door now, and if you have legitimate business, you can return with a warrant. As her hand moved toward the door, Corbin moved faster. He reached for the handle, his fingers wrapping around the metal as he threw his weight against the security chain. The hardware rattled violently, but it held. You're obstructing a federal investigation. That's a felony. I can arrest you right now. The doorbell camera caught it all. The hand on the door, the illegal attempt at entry, the threat of a baseless arrest. It was all there in high definition. You're attempting an illegal entry, Tina shouted, her voice rising with anger rather than fear. I'm recording this interaction, and I am calling 911 if you don't leave my property right now. Corbin released the door and pulled out his own phone. If she wanted recordings, he'd make his own. He pointed it at her through the gap. The subject is refusing to comply with a federal agent's lawful orders, he said into his camera, adopting an official tone for the record. The subject appears to be concealing identity and may be harboring undocumented individuals. Tina's calm finally cracked. I'm not concealing anything. I'm a black woman, standing in my own home that my family has owned since 1962. I am exercising my constitutional rights. You need to leave. But Corbin had already doubled down. He called for backup. The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Tina stayed at the door, watching through the crack as Corbin paced her walkway like a predator. She used the time to make sure her phone was also recording from inside, a backup to the doorbell footage. When the vehicles finally arrived, they came with lights but no sirens. 2 ICES UVs and an Atlanta Police Department cruiser. 2 additional ICE agents stepped out, followed by Sergeant Maria Rodriguez of the APD. Rodriguez had an expression that suggested she already knew this call was going to be a disaster. Corbin immediately launched into an animated explanation, gesturing wildly toward Tina's door. The other ICE agents exchanged glances that were caught clearly on camera, a mix of confusion and genuine concern. Rodriguez listened for maybe 30 seconds before cutting Corbin off. Let me understand this correctly, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. You knocked on someone's door at midnight without a warrant and demanded citizenship papers? She's refusing to cooperate, Corbin insisted. She could be a citizen exercising her rights, Rodriguez interrupted, already walking toward the porch. She approached Tina's door with her hands visible and her badge held up. Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Rodriguez with Atlanta PD. I apologize for this disturbance. She shot a glance back at Corbin that could have melted steel. Ma'am, you are not required to show these agents anything without a warrant. Do you feel threatened by this interaction? Yes, Tina replied clearly. This agent tried to force entry. He grabbed my door handle and pulled on it. He's threatened to arrest me without cause. Oh, I want him off my property. Rodriguez turned slowly. Her demeanor shifted from polite to pure authority. Agent Corbin, you need to leave this property immediately before this becomes an incident that requires my formal report. Corbin's face turned a deep shade of purple. This is a federal matter. You don't have jurisdiction here. I have jurisdiction over attempted illegal entry in my city, Rodriguez countered, her hand resting on her belt near her radio. I have jurisdiction over threats made against a resident in her own home, and I absolutely have jurisdiction over someone who is about to trigger a civil rights lawsuit that will cost my city a fortune when she names everyone present. Leave now, or I will escort you off this property myself and file a report that will be on your supervisor's desk by morning. The backup ICE agents were already retreating. One of them called out, Corbin, let's go. This isn't what we signed up for. But Corbin couldn't let it go. Men who build careers on unchecked power rarely know when to stop. He took 2 steps back and faced Tina's door one last time. We'll be watching this address, he sneered. If you're hiding anyone, we'll find out. People like you always slip up eventually. That final threat was the nail in his coffin. Rodriguez was already reaching for her radio as Corbin finally drove away. Tina stood at her door for a full minute after the street went quiet, her hands shaking as the adrenaline finally began to fade. Tina didn't sleep that night. As she watched the doorbell footage 17 times, taking meticulous notes on timestamps and specific statements, by 3 a.m. she had backed up the files to 3 different cloud services and emailed them to friends. By 6 a.m., she called Phil Brown, a civil rights attorney. By noon, they had filed a formal complaint. Within a week, the footage had gone viral. It started on local Atlanta news and then exploded nationally. The image of Corbin's face, the "You People" comment, and Tina's unwavering calm became a national flashpoint. Within 5 days, the video had been viewed 47 million times. The public outcry forced the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General to launch a formal investigation. What they found was damning. Corbin's community sweeps were completely unauthorized, and he had been conducting racial profiling operations on his own initiative, targeting specific neighborhoods based purely on demographics. His logs showed a pattern of late-night visits, 0 warrants, and constant demands for papers. The investigation also revealed that Corbin had been recording his encounters, but those recordings had mysteriously vanished from evidence storage. Only the incidents where his targets had their own cameras, like Tina's, could be verified. When Tina appeared on CNN, she was the picture of composure. The Fourth Amendment isn't a suggestion, she told the national audience. It's not something that applies only when it's convenient for law enforcement. Agent Corbin had no warrant, no probable cause, and no authority. He targeted my home because of assumptions he made about who belongs in that neighborhood. That's not law enforcement, that's harassment under color of authority. As the discovery process for the lawsuit began, the internal rot was exposed. Email chains showed supervisors telling agents to let Corbin do his thing, because numbers are what matter. Complaints were dismissed with notes like, "Subject is probably illegal anyway." The department had prioritized statistics over the Constitution. Phil Brown filed the $6.7 million lawsuit 3 months later, citing Fourth Amendment violations, racial profiling, and conspiracy to deprive civil rights. The government tried to claim sovereign immunity, but a federal judge denied the motion in a blistering 23-page opinion, citing institutional indifference to civil rights. 18 months after that midnight knock, a settlement was reached. But the money was just the start. Raymond Corbin was terminated with prejudice and permanently barred from law enforcement. The state of Georgia filed criminal charges for attempted illegal entry and making false statements. He ended up with a felony conviction and 5 years of probation. The Department of Homeland Security was forced to implement sweeping reforms, mandatory body cameras with automatic uploads, a civilian oversight board, and comprehensive retraining on constitutional limits. 3 of Corbin's supervisors were demoted. Tina stood on the courthouse steps after the final hearing, surrounded by supporters. This was never about revenge, she told the sea of microphones. This was about accountability. It was about making sure no one else has to feel the terror of being targeted in their own home. If my 15 minutes of viral fame can change the system, then every second of that night was worth it. Tina used a portion of her settlement to start the Constitutional Defense Fund, which now provides legal aid for victims of similar violations. She still works her trauma shifts at the hospital, but she's also a national advocate, training community organizations on how to stand their ground. The doorbell camera is still there, a silent sentinel on her porch. It serves as a reminder that in the digital age, the truth can no longer be buried in a file cabinet. Justice might be delayed, but when it's captured in high definition, it's impossible to ignore.